I'm Jez Benton, and this is Route to the Top. I'll be meeting with a whole range of leaders who'll climb a mountain together and do a video podcast from the summit. In this episode, but we're filming this from the town I grew up in. And I'm here with Stuart Webber, who's the sporting director of Norwich City Football Club. You started your footballing career, I guess, at Wrexham.
Yeah.
Famous club in the US now because
Yes.
of Ryan Reynolds and We Are Wrexham and getting them promoted and all the rest of it. So I'm guessing it was a little bit different when you were there.
Yes, it definitely wasn't showbiz. Definitely wasn't showbiz. But it's always been a special club because it's the only one in North Wales. And it's the oldest international stadium.
International
stadium in the world.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a great place, but you know, great club, great people.
Yeah. Well, this is Route to the Top. So I love the fact that you know, Premier League team to the top, but also relegation and promotion and relegation. So that journey from Wrexham to Norwich.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, long one, but exciting one.
How many years? How
How
old were you at Wrexham?
So I started at 19.
Okay.
And I'm now 39. So
Okay.
20 years.
20-year journey.
Yeah. I used to have hair.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was. I was very lucky, really. I got given an opportunity there to work on the grounds to start with.
Yeah.
Because I left school at 16, and my mum sent me off to a horticultural college because she said you need to do something with your life, which is fair. But I only ever liked football and Formula One. So I was like, all right, how do I get involved in that? So I actually thought I'll be a groundsman. So
Easier to get into football than Formula One?
Probably then.
Probably
I wonder
then,
now.
right?
I wonder
Yeah.
now if it might be a bit different with, you know, amount of engineers and stuff like that. But then these
Yeah.
guys are super clever with computers, and again, that's not me.
Right.
So I went to horticulture college, and part of that was doing a day a week work experience at Wrexham's training ground. So I did that, and I got offered a job there quite early because they thought I was okay, and the guy had left, and I started working there full time on the pitches, just getting really early, make the pitches nice, and then I could stay and watch training then, which was great. And I'd chat to the first team manager and the coaches and stuff, and just learning because I was doing my coaching badges at the same time. So it was, to be honest, a perfect scenario for me. Single lad, watching football all day, being immersed in it,
getting to know the players, getting to see them perform.
Just the industry and stuff like that.
What league were they in? I'm just going to go check the camera because you know what just happened.
No problem.
What league were Wrexham in at the time?
So Wrexham at the time, we were in League One.
Right.
Then there was a relegation, and the club came on some real difficult times. But I got the opportunity to move into a full-time coaching position because the manager got sacked, assistant manager promoted, and he promoted the head of youth. And then this guy called Steve Cooper, who's a Nottingham Forest head coach now, he became the head of youth, and then I became his assistant.
Yeah.
And that was my first break into being full-time on the football side, which was great. And then after around 4 years of doing that, I went to Liverpool to work in their academy, to head up their academy recruitment, which was again an incredible step up. You know, I was only 14 years ago, so 24, 25-ish, so super young really. I had no right to be there, if I'm honest, when I look back. But yeah, took the opportunity and worked hard. And then a guy called Damien Camoli came in as director of football, and there wasn't many around then. This is about 2009-10. There wasn't many directors of football in England. It's common now, 95% of clubs would have one. Right. And then and I really enjoyed the aspects of that job, whereas previously I thought maybe I wanted to be a head coach. Having worked with Damien, I thought, okay, maybe this is a job I want to be. And then so I wanted to work at first team level. I did 4 years at Liverpool, and that was on the cards. But unfortunately, as things happened, Damien got the sack. Kenny Dalglish, who was a manager at the time, got the sack. And the club went in a different direction.
Kenny Dalglish was a player when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I remember it well.
Another great guy. And so the opportunity went because the club went in a different direction, which was absolutely they're right, and it's worked out quite well for them. But I knew I wanted to work at first team, so I knew if I was going to do that, I have to leave Liverpool. So I left to go to QPR, which was a great learning in how bad a culture and environment can be. And I learned a lot of not what to do there, and took some good lessons from it.
Yeah.
But then I left there then quite quickly because it just was not for me, and I got the opportunity to go to Wolves as head of recruitment. So I went to Wolves, but I always knew I wanted to be in a decision-making position and making the big calls, and I wasn't doing that as a head of recruitment. So when the opportunity came up to be a sporting director at Huddersfield, I jumped at the opportunity, and I remember the owner, a guy called Dean Hoyle. He's not the owner any now, but he's self-made millionaire. He came up with a card factory from the back of his van in Huddersfield to selling it for however many hundreds of millions that he sold it for.
So local owner, local club,
exactly,
passionate about
loves
the
club,
team,
fan, obsessed by the club.
Yeah.
But he said to me, he goes, if you're any good, I'll back you, and if you're shit, I'll sack you. And I was like, perfect. That's brilliant. That's what I want to hear. I don't need it sugarcoated.
Yeah.
So I went there, and it was a brilliant time because they'd never had a foreign coach, have no real foreign players, and we managed to build a team where we were favourites to be relegated, and we actually got promoted.
How long were you there for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And it was amazing time because no one expected us to do anything, and we did.
Yeah,
and then
that's a great feeling, right? When you're beating all the odds.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone saw it as a miracle. It was seen within the football world as a miracle. We knew it wasn't. We knew it was actually because of the good work that was going on by a lot of people. But on the outside, it was it's a miracle. And then the opportunity came to Norwich and people wonder why I left Huddersfield at that time to go in the Premier League to come here. But it's just such a bigger club here, and it was a Cat 1 academy, and I looked at Norwich and thought, okay, you can turn this into a big club in terms of the fan base.
Yeah, that's right. You've got the whole county. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the folks back in the US, Norwich is the only club in the county. In fact, the only professional sports team in the county, right? It doesn't have cricket and rugby and stuff, so it gets a lot of following.
Yeah. That's what I've done, and then 6 years on, I'm here.
You're here. Yeah, amazing. And did the same with the club, because I think the first promotion that Norwich got was a little
surprise.
It was a bit of a surprise for that season. I think it was sort of rumour on the street was the plan was the next season. You thought everything would be lined up in that point, but the team really
it was
kicked in, and
it was like the perfect storm. We signed Tim Krul on a free transfer. Elevated us to a new level. We had the emergence of Max Aarons.
Yeah, he's been brilliant.
Ben Godfrey, Jamal Lewis, then Buendia, Timu, Kenny McLean. It was like they all came in as new players effectively that year.
And clicked quickly, and you see Buendia and Pookie playing together.
It was
like
incredible.
A dream.
It was absolutely incredible what them guys did together as a group. Obviously we planned for that, but for the plan, it had to work perfect, and we were lucky that year it pretty much worked. It worked perfect, and that was a good team. Yeah, that was a very good team.
All right, let's get stuck into the kind of leadership side of things. Pause there.
Yep.
Pick it up. Awesome. Well, I guess I'm going to do a welcome back, Stuart, for those people that are watching. You'll be
Part two
would be like, hold on a second. A moment ago, you were sat on the top of a hill in Norfolk, and now you're on Zoom. What happened? So. Major faux pas on my part on a technical glitch from a recording standpoint. So part two comes via Zoom. And actually, I'm quite pleased it has, because over the past few weeks, few things have happened, few things have changed. And I think we'll get into that when we start talking a little bit more about the football side of things. And also, Stuart's just back from climbing Chimborazo out in Ecuador as part of your training towards Everest, which again we're going to get into when we start talking about the foundation and the fundraising that you're doing. But when we left off in Norfolk, we were just about to step into the conversation around leadership, and there's something that you said when we chatted that stuck me, and I wrote it down. You said you always knew you wanted the big job, and that big job becoming the through that journey, the sporting director, as that role sort of emerged within football. And your journey from Wrexham grounds and coaching to Liverpool to recruiting to Wolves to heading up recruiting, I believe, to sporting director at Huddersfield to sporting director at Norwich. My question for you is, I can see how that technically prepared you for, the sporting director roles that you've had at two different clubs. But what were the leadership moments, or what were the leadership experiences that you either saw or had that's kind of confirmed that you've always wanted that big job and that you've kind of stepped into it? So love to hear some of your leadership experiences, good and bad. Oh, and I think I probably left QPR off the list there as well. So I know you had a stint there.
Even now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's obviously a big question and quite a broad one, but I think I'll answer it as best I can, and then obviously pick away at any questions within the answers, I suppose. But I think firstly, I always admired people from a very young age who took responsibility for stuff. You know, whether it's watching people on TV who are having to stand up, you know, managers answering questions, or prime ministers, or whatever, chief of police coming on about a murder crime, and bang, you know, sort of admired, wow, look at this guy or this woman taking responsibility for this this moment. That must feel amazing having that, you know. And probably when you're younger, you think of it as just the positive side of, God, it must be amazing being that guy who's having to deal with all that. Yeah. Not realizing that when you are the guy dealing with that, there is obviously some challenges which come alongside it. But from a naive point of view, it was like super excited to be like, oh, I want to be that guy. I want to be that person stood in front of the camera or a big important meeting. So not in a famous way, don't get me wrong. When I say the camera, I don't mean it in that way, but I mean in terms of the guy shouldering responsibility for, leading a group of people. You know, and so I think I knew that quite early. I also knew very early in my working, when I'm saying early, I'm probably more talking about my working life now, that I got super frustrated by not being able to make decisions. So being sat further back, not being the guy who could ultimately have the final say or play a big part in the final say, let's say, because, you know, it's not, I mean, it's ever as easy, it's just down to one person. I think most scenarios
everybody has
pretty positive, you know, but obviously sometimes eventually someone has to make a call, but pretty much is a group of people in any walk of life making a decision. And I thought I want to be in that group because, you know, I got frustrated with them in my work at various clubs of, I can't really get to have a say. And I think I've actually got something which could add value to what we're trying to do here. So I learned super early in my working life that I need to do that. And it's probably why I ended up being, you know, sporting director at Huddersfield at the age of, about 31, which is very young. Yeah. You know, I was younger than probably 30-40% of the players, let alone the staff. I was probably younger than all of the staff. So I was always in a rush to get into that position. And like I said, obviously technically my experience helped a lot, but I think what I learned on my journey from, you know, Wrexham, like I say, all the way through, is learning about, it's about people, and it's about, when you are in a leadership position, it's about understanding people. Empathy is a big word that I've learned to really understand more, and I think that's helped me becoming a dad, becoming naturally older, of course, more experienced. Of like, how do you become more empathetic? Because probably 10 years ago I wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have shown empathy to a parent because I wasn't one. So I was like, do you mean you want to be at your kid's birthday? There's another piece of work to be done. Because I had no empathy for that. I had no understanding of how important actually a kid's birthday party is to a kid. Yeah. And then you have a kid and you realize, oh my God, it's the biggest day of the year for them. And you sort of realize, actually, yeah, that's something that you need to understand. So I've learned through experiences, but then probably having them experiences, to how can I become even more empathetic towards other situations. And like I say, it's about people. I was lucky at, you know, at Wrexham, we worked with a guy called Joey Jones, who won two European Cups for Liverpool as a player back in the day. And he's still probably the hardest man I've ever met in football, certainly. And he was always like, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. He was always about work ethic. He used to say to players, if they were doing a run, don't cut corners because you wouldn't like if they cut your wages, you know, and stuff that just like real behavioral type of stuff, which at that time, it wasn't the buzzwords that it is now about, oh, let's talk about the culture and the behavior and the values and all the things that we all talk about now in probably every organization in the world. Back then, it was like living it, and it was never a buzzword. It was like, that's what it was. But when I look back 20 years, that was somebody there who was displaying all the things that we now talk about. And I think it's like your childhood, you know, things stick with you. I think it's the same with you when you're impressionable within a young man or young woman working. There's people who stick in your head, and I'll use a Joey Jones saying once a day with somebody, because it's like, because they're true then as they are now. And I'm sure who he learned them off was probably someone 20, 30 years earlier, probably when he was playing in the 70s. So, you know, it's sort of like these things are, you know, yes, they evolve slightly. Maybe the language around these things, of course, change as you know, as society changes. But the fundamental behaviour of it is that. So I think I've waffled a little bit there, as I normally do, as you
Oh,
well
it's
know.
great. It's great.
I think in terms of that, wanting to learn a leader was that, because I thought, right, I want to be that guy to be shot at. And then secondly, it was like, I think along the way, it's been just such a diverse amount of people I've worked with. You know, and I pride myself on having the ability to communicate with an 82-year-old owner now, or a 12-year-old boy in our academy. You know, I think I've got that open-mindedness enough to try and see the world through their eyes. And if I can't see it, okay, I've got to ask the questions as what is your world? Because you can't relate to everyone. I can't relate to an 18-year-old guy who's been brought up in South London where stabbings are left, right, and centre. You know, right. I can't get around why that world exists. So, but what I can do is ask questions of why does that make you the person you are then, and how do we, you know, how can I learn to deal with you better in a situation compared to maybe someone who went to a private school and has had a amazing family life and got a great upbringing. I think it's trying to treat everyone on their individual merits has been a key sort of learning for me, because, you know, like I say, I've lived that through seeing people who've had the ability to demonstrate that to me. And I think that's where I picked that up. I've not done a course or anything on that.
Yeah. No, and I love that, the sort of Joey Jones comment of, you know, it's the stuff now that you could do a course on, or that, you know, people talk about cultural behaviors and there's a gazillion books written on it. But back then the probably wasn't, and it was, you know, just them doing what they are doing and thinking about the words that they use and how that's going to affect the culture of the place, without even going, it's probably going to affect the culture of the place, right? They're just that consciousness around the words we use, the behaviors. But it's really interesting, the things that stick. You gave us a positive one in there. I work a lot with a ton of leaders who say, hey, you know, half of what I've learned is by watching leaders and going, I never want to lead like that. I never want to be like that. You know, so the opposite being true as well. So any experiences in that space where you're like, yeah, that's not working. When I'm in the shoes, I'm gonna do the opposite.
Yeah, I've had lots of that, as I'm sure we have. But, you know, something my mum always used to say, or would still say to me, is, you know, treat people how you want to be treated yourself. And that's something I've always looked at people in leadership positions. And I feel for them sometimes, because I think you've probably been over-promoted here. You know, it's probably not your fault that you're now in this position and you're now trying to portray what you think a leader should look like. And I think that's where, in my opinion, you know, lots of wannabe leaders maybe fall a little bit, is because they have a perception of what it should be, rather than being authentic and being yourself. And I think there's so many different ways to lead. And I think as leaders, you have to lead in many different ways, because there's so many different scenarios, you know. So leading here, for example, in this organization through a pandemic was very, very different to how we'd lead today, because through a pandemic, the amount of uncertainty in the whole world was off the scale. So, okay, that leadership would be very different to now, where we're back to, dare I say it, normal, and bang, we're back to performance. So it's, you know, that it's you know, you have to sort of learn that. But yeah, I think the bad ways, I think, is when you know, I've witnessed people chuck people under the bus publicly in meetings or whatever, you know, not take accountability. I struggle a lot with leaders who can't show vulnerability. You know, I think it's a massive weakness if you haven't got the ability to say, you know what, I've got this wrong, but this is what I learned through it. I think that's a huge failing, because anyone who's ever done everything right, you know, whether you believe in God or not, but even you'd have to argue he hasn't got every decision right. So it's like, you know, because you'll have a perception of, well, yeah, we had an earthquake over there. For the people in the earthquake, they'd disagree that was the right thing, wrong, that probably wasn't the right thing for God to do. Someone over here might go, yeah, but at least they got it, so it's the right thing for us. So even he hasn't got it all right, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it's that the leader who can't show that I need to learn from you, I need to get better, is probably I've learned the most from, because I that turns me off massively. If I'm being led, if I'm with someone who, my boss is, if it's someone who talks at me like as they've never made a mistake, it turns me off of, you're not authentic then, mate, because it's impossible.
Yeah.
Whereas I like the ones, with Dean Hoyle, the owner of Huddersfield, who would ring up and go, Stuart, I don't know the answer to this. What do you think? Can you help? And it's like, well, yeah, that's probably why you're a multi-millionaire, because you've actually got the ability to know, I actually don't know this bit, but I'm going to ask someone who can help me, or Delia Smith and Michael here, who, as well, at 82 years old, they will still ask questions and go, I messed this up this week. But this is what I learned from it. And I think, and we would have all been around them and seen them many times, and I think it's often an insecurity of, that mushy, typical male leader sort of, going to rule with an iron fist. It's like, they're the ones I've always thought I never want to be that guy. Whilst knowing at times, of course, you have to be that guy sometimes. You have to act. You have to put on the act of, right, I'm in charge here, and I've got to make some tough decisions. But I think most of the time it's trying to lead with,
But that's going back to you didn't use the word context, but that was the word that was in my head. That takes you back to the sort of contextual leadership that you have to do when you're tuned in and you recognize the different situations. COVID versus now is a macro situation, but there are many micro situations, right? Delia and Michael versus a player or a sporting director at another club, or whatever it might be. Recognizing that those situations are changing, and as long as you are, and I wrote down the words that you used, as long as you're being authentic in that moment and doing what's required, then that's still you being you. Switching styles ever so slightly to deal with those situations. But there's some interesting words you just used that you use the word empathy, use the word vulnerability, authenticity, learning, and always questioning. Sort of tenets of leadership that you are, or that you experience, that you like. Therefore, you're trying to create that. That as a list I would say is a sort of open set of words. It's like, because being vulnerable and being authentic stuff, some people will say, hey, I guard against that stuff because it can get me into trouble, and I put up the guard, and I be somebody who I'm not, and all that. So what gives you the comfort to be like that? Because there has to be a level of comfort and maybe confidence to be like that, versus stick up the barriers, the mask, and be something that you're not.
Yeah, I think it comes from, I don't care. I sort of started with nothing, and going back to nothing doesn't scare me.
Okay.
Because it's like, well, I was happy with nothing. So I think I live in that, and when I say nothing, I don't mean my wife and family.
Sure. Yeah.
By that, I mean, status, career, financial, whatever. So it's more a case of like, I think, well, you either take me for me or you don't. Right. And I'm okay with that, because if I'm not for you, I back myself that I'm going to get a job somewhere else. And if I don't, well, the worst is I had what I had before, and I'm still happy. So that's all right. So I think it comes from that. I'm very honest with my people who employ me. Whether it's Dean Hoyle at Huddersfield or Delia and Michael here, or whoever my next employees will be. I have a very honest conversation before we sign the contract of, this is me. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not good at. This is what I'll do. These are the type of mistakes we make. I'll always own them, though. I'll always be brutally honest. I will call your baby ugly at times. If all of these things aren't for you, please, I'm not your guy. We'll end up falling out. If you want Mr. Corporate,
Politically
Mr.
correct.
Politically correct. Doesn't, unfortunately, I do drop the odd swear word in too many times and stuff. I'm trying to improve on that, Dinley. I am. But it's a bit like, that's me. If you want someone who looks like this, go and get him, because you can't turn me into him. And I think that comes from that comfort as well, is I know I'm super honest from the start with the people employing me. Of I lay myself bare of, this is me, this is my personality, this is how I react in this situation, this is how I react in this situation, this type of mistake I'll make. If that's not for you, great, not a problem. But I'd rather be honest now than you think you're getting someone. That's why any interview I've done or like job interview and stuff, I've always just been super honest. And there's been times where I haven't got jobs, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's okay, because I'd rather that than prepare just to get your job, and then 6 months down the line, be either unhappy because I'm having to be something I'm not, or they're unhappy because it's like, well, hang on, you didn't portray that when we employed you. So I think the comfort a lot comes from that. Like I say, not worrying about what I don't have.
Yeah, I love that way of managing. The word I wrote down was risk. I love the way in which you can sort of mentally manage risk, of being yourself and being comfortable in that. And say, well, what's the worst that could happen? Or, if it doesn't work out, I'll do something else or whatever. But you flip that thought to the, sort of, here's who I am, here's what I'll do, here's how I'll be within the place. When you joined Norwich 6 years ago, obviously Delia and Michael and whoever else was in that group of people that hired you heard that and said, we like that. That's what we need. That's what we need here now. Or they could have said, no, we don't like that. It's not what we need. We'll go look at something else. But they clearly said, no, that's what we need here right now. Let's bring Stuart in. So for the last 6 years, you've been at Norwich. How has, and this is, we're stepping from sort of your leadership into kind of what's changed at Norwich over the last 6 years, and how have you impacted that through leadership? And you can come at that from a kind of culture standpoint, or from a behavior standpoint, or just a general club. Like as you stepped in, you think about that 6-year journey, and they said, yeah, we're gonna hire this guy, and we like what he said. What have you been able to do, and how do you see the club has progressed from there's big club, lot can be done here, very excited to step into that role. Just sort of journey from how things have changed, how it's gone, the culture of the place, and how that's developed.
Yeah, I think we've developed a lot. I felt, again, I might be wrong, but I felt when we turned up, it was a bit of a culture of fear. It definitely wasn't a great togetherness. So, for example, people from the business who are based at the stadium and the training centre, which is where I'm based, there'd be very little interaction between the two sites. And in fact, when people went from one site to the other, they weren't, particularly made to feel welcome. And I can't stand that. I feel, I don't feel good if I go into a place where you feel like, am I not really welcome here? That's one of my big sort of don't likes in the world, is, from remembering as a school kid or whatever, going into a party like, oh, I don't feel comfortable here. So I like to make places feel comfortable, welcoming, warm. And I think if you come to our training ground, it should be an amazing experience for you, whether you're a staff member who comes every day, or whether you're someone who comes every so often, or whether you're an outside visitor. You should go away from here going, everyone said hello to me, everyone used manners. People made me feel comfortable. People made me feel like I was safe. I could go through that gate and the world can't get me. Whatever's going on in my life, horrific things at home, whatever. My bloody mum's dying, or this is happening. You know what? I go into that safe space and I'm with a group of people who all care about each other, all work incredibly hard, demand a lot of each other, but fundamentally I feel safe. I can go and sit and have my lunch with any one staff member that works here and be able to sit there and have a conversation and know that I'm not going to be judged, and that there's someone there to listen to me. And I think, and they have a enthusiasm and a laugh. Do you know what I mean? It's important to me that I like hearing people laugh and enjoy themselves, because often in our industry, you lose more than you win. You get bogged down with so many different things. There's so much outside pressure that it's like you've got to have an environment where people can come and go, you know what, we actually can mess around for 10 minutes and it's all right. It's okay. So that was the thing where when I first came in, I was like, whoa, this place isn't me. It's too stuffy. It's too formal. It's too, people didn't really know, in my opinion, how to behave. It felt like, okay, are we nice to each other? Are we not nice to each other? Do we treat the groundsman the same as the head coach or not? It's like, well, yeah, no, absolutely we do, because when we're here, we're all the same. Yeah, bits of hierarchy, of course, in every time, but ultimately we're all here to achieve the same goal. So it's like, well, let's treat each other like that, as opposed to, oh, them over there, you can only have lunch at this time because you're not important. It's like, no, let's get rid of that. But then what to help harbour that was then, okay, that's all well and good, but probably the physical surroundings of the environment didn't lend itself to that. So it's one thing, the behavior being right, trying to explain the behaviors, but still the physical nature of the facility, in my opinion, contradicted a lot of that, because
it's huge. What we call physical artifacts. You walk into, we do it all the time, right? We walk into somebody's headquarters, and then the organization has some kind of statement in the lobby or whatever that says, we're innovative and we're customer focused and we're this, that, and the other. And you walk in and it's sort of a grey windowless hellhole. You go like, well, how do you be innovative in this? Or, the way in which you get treated at the desk didn't feel like some kind of high level of customer experience. So the physical artifacts of a place is massive when it comes to culture and culture change, because that's what people see and experience, as well as, like you said, the behaviors, the interaction. So what did you do? How did you change things?
Well, first thing, it was like, right, okay, what can we? So one of our values is growth. So I was like, right, how do we demonstrate growth here so that people, our staff, our players can actually feel we're growing, if that's the word. So we were like, we got to do something. So we actually drew Arsenal in the League Cup away, and our training pitches had no floodlights. So in the cup game, we never budget for that. So the Arsenal game earned us around 300 grand. So I actually said to the board, can we have that 300 grand, please, to put floodlights in? So when the players come back in, 6 weeks or whatever after the summer, they can actually physically see something different, and which demonstrates growth. And then we did a lot of, we went to America and we took some inspiration from NFL of just like, how can we do best with what we got in terms of the facility, in terms of bringing, pictures to life and color to life, and making it in a place where you walk in and play, oh, okay, this is different. So that was almost the start of the sort of mantra when we had, sort of no money, and we were sort of trying a bit of perfume on a pig, really. But it was like, right, no, let's make some little changes, because that can maybe change the mentality to then lead to bigger change.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And, we ended up with what we've got now, which is, by the time the swimming pool's finished in 3 months, it's, a world-class training venue. Yeah. Where every player or staff member, whoever comes here now from opposition or with new signings, walk in and it's like, wow, I wasn't expecting this. This is unbelievable, and that's where we've got to. But that's come again. It comes back to leadership. That's been, the swimming pool that we've designed has been designed by our head of sports science, head of medical, not by me. I'm there to facilitate, to drive, to try and get decisions through above. But ultimately, it's like, guys, that's your workspace. You know what best looks like in that area. I don't. I can't tell you what the best swimming pool in the world should look like. I can't even swim. So it's like using experts and encouraging them then to be ambitious of, if we're going to do this, let's do this to the best of our ability. So if we have to cut back on budget along the way, we will. But let's aim high, and it's trying to inspire the staff, if you like, involved in these projects to go, no, come on, you go and tell me find out what the best looks like, bring it back here, and then we'll work together to try and actually make it become a reality.
Yeah.
And drive it forward. And I'll deal with the crap. Don't worry about that. I'll deal with the rubbish, the financial side and stuff. You just come with more ideas and more enthusiasm and more creativity about, right, we've got this space. How can we best maximize this? And I think that's what we've tried to do here in the 6 years. And, and that's the same with being innovative around technologies or around staffing structures. We've got a data and innovation team now of 8 people. We've got data scientists, data engineers. I didn't even know what data was 6 years ago. But it's like trying to be open as a leader to, okay, there's this data. I need to understand it better. I'm never going to be an expert in it. Right, I need to employ some experts who can drive that forward. I've got a vision of what I think data can do to help us get better.
Yeah.
I can't implement that vision. It's beyond me. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not some guy who can do X and Y coordinates and come out with something which says do this.
Yeah, but you're a guy who can take the outputs and the story and help make decisions to move that forward.
Exactly. But then it's like employ someone who does know what people who can build these systems look like. Yeah. So it's been great from that point of view. And I think what we've tried to do here is constantly show that we're trying to grow every year, step by step by step by step, whether that's a good year on the pitch, whether it's a bad year on the pitch. It's like, no, we still grow as a club. And I think that's what I take greatest pride from.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the guys in the business would say the same is, if you walk into our football club on the day I leave, whenever that's going to be in the next 6-7 months, to the day I joined, and if you had like a little camcorder and went around everywhere, you'd not think it's the same place. Right. And how staff have developed and stuff as well. You'd be like, that's not the same staff member. Oh no, it is. But he or she, they've now developed. They've gone from a junior into a senior leadership position where they're now making decisions. And I think that's the biggest impact is it's transformed ultimately what we look like. Loads of mistakes along the way, loads of learnings. Absolutely, of course there is. But ultimately everything we've done is to try and help grow the organization and make us better. And when you don't have the most money like we don't have, then we have to take more risks and we have to work harder. Well, unfortunately, along the way with that, you then get some of the risks don't work out. But that's all right. I think again, if everyone's on the same page to understand risk versus reward, then it's understand that we're trying this and it might not work, but the worst is going to be this. Say what if it wins or if it does well, the gain is massive. Let's try it.
That's the same attitude that you have about yourself as well. Just what you just said then about the club and the growth is also, if it works, great. If it doesn't, we're trying, we're doing something. That's the same attitude that you personally have when we were talking earlier about, some of those tenants and when you meet with owners and say, here's what you're getting. So I can see how those two things are kind of partnering well with each other, how you have influenced all of that and growth being, part of the legacy over the last 6 years or the journey over the last 6 years for you and for the club. How about, you say in this business, you lose more than you win. And I guess that depends on the year. You and the club, I think this is a double question around resilience. And so what I mean by this is like you personally, because you're in the press and stuff like that, you can read something. In fact, I read something a couple of days ago. Stuart's a genius, brilliant in the transfer market. What a great squad we've got, and out the gate with 2 wins and a big goal scoring draw that was very close to being a win. So it's like that's all great, right? for the last few weeks and great stuff. And then you can you probably look back 6 months and could find the exact same people saying the opposite about you. And so that's you. But then you probably find the same things about the team or the club or whatever. So how do you build, or how have you sort of built a level of resilience in yourself and within the club to what I would call the roller coaster of that? Because that's very unique, and as a sporting director or of a CEO of an organization, right? That turn on a dime is very unique, I think, to sport. Because either you're winning or you're losing, or you're drawing, and that's like losing. So, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, it's just got a lot easier with experience. I mean, you have to go through it to know what it feels like to be overly praised and to be overly sort of criticised. And I think where I've got to is learning that the reality is you're always somewhere probably in between. You're never a genius and you're never as bad as what people make out. And I think how I've become resilient to it in terms of the media stuff, I don't read it. And I've stopped reading it probably 4 or 5 years ago because it's like, actually, this isn't helping me. Because you've got people writing about you that you've never met, you don't know. And it comes back to the empathy point. I've got no empathy because they've actually got no idea what your job is. It's a bit like me writing about a brain surgeon and going, can't believe that brain surgeon got it wrong and, killed that poor child. He's an idiot. It's a bit like, hey, have you ever picked up a scalpel, let alone, and it's like, whereas that's what it's like in football. I'm not comparing us to brain surgeons, don't get me wrong. But what I am saying is football is a sport, well, most sports, but where sort of everyone is entitled to an opinion. And that's the great thing about sport. And that shouldn't go away. But what comes with that is in the day and age we are now, people can write on social media, they can write in to local newspapers or whatever, and people start to take their opinion as fact. And Dave from down the road who writes in the local paper can be saying that I am absolutely brilliant, this, that, and the other. And people go, oh, Dave who writes in the paper, he must know. And it's like, he hasn't got a clue.
Yeah.
That's not his fault. It's just his opinion, but everyone takes it as fact because Dave who writes in the paper, he must be right. So I think it's learning to ignore it, and I think it's learning to have a group of people around you, which is very small, that you can get very honest feedback from.
Yeah, so you're not avoiding the feedback. You're just not reading the press.
Exactly. It's
from
like
a trusted group of people who actually know.
Exactly, people who may be mentors who've done the job. Who can say, listen, I did this and this. This was the outcome. Who can critique you and go, this ain't going to be a nice conversation for you, but you need to listen. That was a bad decision, and this is why it's a bad decision. Or likewise, you do something and this, and they go, you know what? That was the right call in that moment. It just didn't work out.
Yeah,
it didn't work out, and it's like so I think it's having them people who can again show empathy. Maybe been there, done it. Not necessarily in the same industry, because I'll speak to lots of people in other business, but people who because often we're dealing with people. So a lot of our decisions we make is to do with a person or a group of people. So it's not all about if you've only been a sporting director, you understand. Absolutely not. I'll talk to other people who lead groups of people and go, I said this. Oh yeah, no, that wouldn't have worked well in our industry either. You probably shouldn't have said that, or you shouldn't have framed it that way, or whatever. Oh, okay. So I think for me, it's finding that. I think the organisation resilience is a lot tougher because you're dealing with, or in my opinion, we're dealing with. We have a lot of young staff from the age of 16, let's say, when they can come in as scholars or footballers, or they can come in as interns, or 18, they can start working within the club shop or whatever, right away through to people who've been here 40 years. We've seen it all, good times, bad times. So you're trying to take a whole generational difference of people on a journey with you. And I think that's really hard, because I think to say to an 18-year-old now, why are you on social media? Why are you looking at that rubbish?
Yeah.
I think if you just say that, they look at you like you're an alien.
Yeah.
And they're right, because that's their world.
Their world.
And I think if I was 18 again, I'd be all over it. And I'm just so grateful that it wasn't around when I was a young guy, because I would have for sure tweeted stuff about Man United players and being a Leeds fan and all this sort of stuff, which people could now screenshot and go, look what he wrote 15 years ago, and they'd be like, well, yeah, but I was a bit of a knobhead then. I'm not now. And I think it's so to get these guys to understand, oh yeah, just ignore it. I think I'm trying to understand more. That's like a foreign language, and what do you mean just ignore it? Why am I going to ignore it? This guy's tweeting about me, or this woman's tweeting or whatever. It's their world. And it's a world I'm glad I sort of just missed out on, really. But then I think it's super tough to build that resilience together, because you'll meet a 50-year-old woman who works in accounts who'll go, I don't even know what Twitter is. I've no idea. I don't know what they're saying on Twitter about the club. Where do you find that? But then you got sat next to her, 22-year-old, who's going, oh my God, look what they're writing about us, Wagner or whatever, us, and this, that, and the other. So I think it's tough, but I think all you can continue to do is build that environment of understanding of, okay, yeah, we know some of our young guys will get a bit more caught up in that, both in a positive and a negative way. You know, when things are going well, they'll be maybe a bit too high, and then when things are low, a bit too low. And how can we, you know, understand that, you know, we've been through that journey as well. And you know, I remember we had Eddie Jones here, came into the talk, the ex-England rugby coach, who's now Australia rugby coach. And he said to the players, he said, who's the oldest in the room? Is to the players, and you know, whichever one put his hand up, and he said, who's the youngest? And it was a young guy actually called Johnny Rose, just scored 3 goals in 3 games for us.
Yeah.
And he said to the older player, he says, oh, what do you know about him? And the older player's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, where's he from? What's his background? What's he into? And the older player's, I don't know. Then he said to Johnny, he goes, what do you know about him? And Johnny couldn't answer. And he goes, what's his wife's name? And this is where Johnny's quite smart. He goes, Mrs. Gibson. But the point he was making is, he goes, you've got to remember, guys, you're 15 years apart. You need to somehow try and bridge that and get to know each other and understand that he acts like that because he's 18.
Yeah,
you act like that 34.
Yeah. He's out clubbing
when you're 18
with 3 kids. Yeah. But when you're on the football.
Exactly. He's coming in the morning in a mood because his kid's being bullied at school. Yeah. He's coming in the mood in the morning because, I don't know, someone's rejecting him on Tinder or whatever. And trying to have that level again of understanding of each other. And I took a lot from that when Eddie came. Of like, oh, okay, yeah, because I think that transcends across the business, because we'll have 18, 19, 20-year-old women working in our staff, you know, in sports science teams or whatever. You know, and likewise we'll have 50 to 60-year-old guys who've been in ticket office all their life, and it's like, wow, that's generational.
Yeah.
You know, we need to connect. So they're never going to be completely on the same page, because I think that's impossible. But you know, at least to have understanding of, okay, that's why he sees the world like that. Oh, okay, that's why she sees the world like that. That's why she reacts to this adversity like this.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't seem bothered. Well, yeah, because he's seen it 10 times before. Just, you know, so he's more relaxed. So again, I think it comes down to people, right, and understanding each other.
Yeah, I love the way you think about it, and a lot of it is relationships. When we talk about resilience a bit, and obviously my experience on Everest sort of puts that under the magnifying glass, as you well know. Yeah. And one of the pillars that I talk about a lot for resilience is connectedness. How connected are you to other people? So I think a lot of people think of resilience as a bit of an individual thing, like I'm resilient, I'm tough, I can bounce back, this, that, the other, which it is. But what allows you to bounce back are many different things: your health, your focus on the future, you know, your mental attitude, but also your connectedness to other people. So it's interesting when you said, you know, the bad press, you ignore it, but you have a group of people that you're connected to, that you talk to about that's helping build resilience in you and the organization by doing that. It's that connectedness. And I remember very, very clearly on Everest, half of my connectedness were with people who weren't there, right? Yeah. So you have guides, and you have the Sherpas, and you have the cook, and you have the expedition leader, and of course you have the team members, and also, so I felt I made a big effort to be connected to all of those. You know, I'd be the person sat in the Sherpa's tent at night having a cup of tea with them, where everybody else was holed off, you know, listening to music or whatever, because I needed to feel that connectedness. But I also felt very strong connectedness to people who weren't there, like my parents at the time, who were like, I know they're worrying about me back at home, and that actually makes me feel more resilient towards the mountain and being able to do what I do. So I think that those relationships are key. Whether those people are on the pitch at the time or not doesn't matter. That sense and that feeling is huge for resilience.
Yeah, no.
Well, let's pivot into the climb, as I sort of brought up Everest. So I mentioned this at the start. I was excited to talk to you, not just because of the role that you have, the team that you're leading, but what you're about to attempt. So Everest is on the horizon for spring of 2024. So that's 7 months away. I know that you leave in 4 or 5 weeks to climb Choyoyu, which for viewers who aren't mountain goers that are watching, this is the 6th highest mountain in the world, and typically a peak that people climb to iron out the last few things that they haven't done before climbing Everest, which is usually climbing on fixed ropes and using oxygen, getting above 8,000 meters into the death zone and see how your body reacts. So you got that in a few weeks' time coming up, and you've just come back from Ecuador, having climbed Chimborazo, which is the highest mountain in Ecuador, I believe, and a volcano, which luckily for you hasn't erupted since 550 AD, so you were safe. Safe there. So successful thing. So this, and I know it's been a journey for a few years before that. But why? Because your why is very different to my why. My why is I've been a mountaineer for life and I wanted to hit the pinnacle of my mountaineering career by climbing Everest. But yours is different. So why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, good question. I think, I've always been brought up in mid Wales. So I was always brought up in what were very small mountains, but, I look out my bedroom window and there'd just be hills and outside. And I've always been the happiest when I'm outside, to be honest. That's why I spend most of my time at work walking around other people's offices. And if I'm meeting people, walking around outside having a meeting as opposed to sat in the office. I hate this being stuck. I'm in my office now, just sort of stuck here. It's a bit like, and then during the COVID lockdown period, I thought Everest was always something I thought, imagine being able to climb Everest, that must be unbelievable. And then during the COVID lockdown, when we had obviously a bit more time than we would normally because we couldn't travel, I actually looked into, is it possible for, a normal sort of person? Because, I've always looked at it as people who climb Everest, it's like, wow, these are superhuman guys, and people, and, wow, doing that, you must be, so ridiculously fit and mentally strong, etc., all of which is true. But as soon, with a bit of research, people guided me as to, well, listen, it's a journey to do on it. So I was like, okay, well, let's go on the journey. And, and I started with Kilimanjaro just to go and get experience at altitude, but at a safe sort of, it's not climb, is it? It's like Snowdon at altitude is how I explain it to people.
4 or 5 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as beautiful as it was, but it was great to sort of, okay, altitude's not bad, right? Okay, now let's up the technique a little bit. And, that's when I went and did Cotopaxi, Mont Blanc. And it was like, okay, well, I quite enjoy this side of it as well, being in the snow and the crampons and, the ropes and, a little bit of danger, a little bit, some crevasses of, okay, this is quite exciting as well. And that's why, I've just continued the journey really with the aim in mind is to try and climb Everest. And, I've got one more big climb to do, like you say, Choyoyu in a few weeks. And then it's a run into Everest, which I'm sort of super excited about because, you train so hard for it, physically and mentally to prepare. It's almost like you just get to the stage, right, I just want to get on there now and sort of attempt.
When's the next one? Do you feel ready?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm at a good age to do it in terms of I still feel young and fit. I'm the fittest I've ever been, I think, certainly since late teens, let's say. But I also think I'm mature enough to understand the teamwork element. There's going to be periods of suffering. There's going to be mental strain. There's going to be loneliness. All the things which come with climbing mountains. Even if you only go for a week to Ecuador, you feel these emotions. I feel like I'm mature enough to, okay, I can deal with them now. Whereas if I would have done it, because you were relatively young, I think, when you did it.
32. Yeah, it's 32.
I probably,
I was the youngest climber on our team. In fact, I was 32, and the oldest climber on our team was 72.
Yeah, so I think if I look back 9 or 8 years by the time I'm doing it to 32, I actually don't think I would have been ready mentally. Not necessarily, might have done all the techniques and stuff and been able to get fit enough, but I think I'm in a much better place now than I would have been then. So I'm excited now, really. It's sort of yeah, I'm looking forward to see, excuse me, see what comes of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the mental side it's probably 50-50 in my experience, and certainly on the team that I was on, the number of people that sort of turned around because something happened up here that made it switch versus a physical or often a health issue. So, you know, like you said, you're the healthiest you've ever been, and or since your early teenagers. And that was the same for me on Everest. But with maturity also comes pace, and you know, mountaineering is what I call a slow person sport. You know, you're not running up something. There's not a speed test, although some people treat it as a speed test. You know, it's a steady away thing, and having the patience to be in that zone for, you know, weeks on end. I could see frustrating people as well. It's just like, you know, some people really struggled with the level of patience and boredom at times. You know, a week of bad weather, you're not going anywhere and doing anything, and there's not a lot to do. So again, that connectedness to people and places is huge. So that's the personal reason for doing it. But I also know that you set up a foundation and are raising funds for that. So in our last couple of minutes that we've got here, you know, just so we can get that pushed out and publicized to people, raising money for what, and how do people donate?
Yeah, so when I was, you know, decided I was going to do it, so it'll be probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, said to my wife, right, you know, I want to go for this. I think I've mapped out a plan of how to attack it and how to prepare for it. If I drop off along the way, no problem. But to be honest, I don't think I will. The mindset is, I've seen this goal, let's go after it. And at that stage of my life as well, I was also ready for something else in my life other than just work. It's like, I want to have something else to focus on. I want to go to the gym in the morning with more of a purpose rather than just keep fit. It's like, no, I want to keep fit for something. So my wife was like, okay, yeah. I don't understand, but I understand. And you'll probably know what I mean by that. And she says, but if you're going to do it, you may as well, you know, and you're going to put your life in danger. Do you not think you should do it for a cause? And I was like, okay, I hadn't thought of it like that. And I was like, well, two things. One, there's not a cause that is massively dear to me. You know, there's not something which has affected me where I'm like, right, bang, I want to go and do that. You know, like, you know, someone lose their brother to cancer or something. It's like, right, I'm doing it for that. And I you know, I love that and respect that. But I don't have something like that, which I'm grateful for, obviously. Then secondly, I'm not sure I want the added pressure of I'm doing it for this particular person or particular charity, and if it doesn't work out, or it clouds your judgment, or it's people going, oh, you need to do this media now, and almost like people start trying it, and you're like, I don't want to do that. I want to just concentrate on climbing a mountain and you know, keeping myself alive. Because one thing I've learned, and that was a decision before I started climbing, but one thing I've definitely learned since climbing is you don't understand it until you've done it, of actually how hard it is.
And how to manage the risk of it as well. And you know, and so I'm super glad I made the decision. So what my wife and I decided to do was, well, why don't we start up our own foundation for something that we are passionate about, and that is educating young people and trying to help young people. So, and we love Norfolk, you know, which is where we live and which has now become our home. It's, you know, our son wasn't born here, but he's had, you know, he moved here before he's 1, and you know, he's now 7, so he's had most of his, you know, he classed himself as from here and a Norwich fan, etc. So it's like, excuse me, let's start something where we can create a legacy, where we can actually give back to the local community. So we started what we call Summit Foundation, because obviously the summit being the, you know, a cool name to come up with. And so we started raising money for that. We're gonna have a big push when I announce officially about Choi, because I'm also going to do Choi, and I'm going to try and do Everest Lotse double while I'm there. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So we're going to try and market it, for want of a better term, as, you know, three three of the top 6 peaks in 6 months sort of challenge. And then we want to try and raise as much money as we can there. And then where we do, because we haven't got the time or more importantly the expertise, is we can't be out there putting on programs for 7-year-old kids getting into sport. But what we can do is we can fund some of the amazing charities that are already existing within Norfolk, who are helping these and have got the expertise. They've got the people on the ground to deliver these programs. Bang, we can put our funding into them. And then what we want with the foundation after Everest then is to continue that legacy and then start doing annual events with
annual summit events in different.
Exactly. We did last year.
You could repeat the 4 peaks that we did the other day, Stuart.
Exactly. But like last year, we took, for example, a group of kids up Snowdon. Raised a load of money doing that, and we've got kids out from Norfolk who never seen a mountain because it's not their fault. There's none here. Likewise, maybe a kid in Birmingham's never seen the sea. Well, why would they? They live in Birmingham. It's a long way away, the sea, from there. So that's our aim of the charity. We created a podcast called the Climb Podcast, which we've had 2 series. We'll start a 3rd. We've had some amazing guests on there: Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard, Ronnie O'Sullivan, sort of people like that. So it's been great where we've sort of been talking about how they dealt with adversity and sort of stuff like that, and trying to relate it to climbing a little bit. We're having a go, and we're trying to give back, and it's something that certainly when I finish work, I'll have some more time and energy to dedicate to it as well, which will be great because if there's a period of when I'm not working, at least I've got something to keep my
something to focus on,
ticking over, which is important,
etc. Love it. So is there a website, Summit Foundation?
Yeah, we got a website. It's the Summit Foundation I should know this, co.uk or
that's all right. We'll have our editor put a ticker along the bottom of the video on this podcast.
I'll have to get it. And then we've got Lauren, one of our trustees, runs the social media on it, and it's at the Summit _FDN, and that's Twitter and Instagram, I believe. Because when we first set it up, apparently I was getting loads of abuse off it from Norwich fans, and it was funny because it was like I wouldn't even know how to use it. So I think
it was somebody else and stuff out.
It was someone else who was just deleting them and not me.
That's funny.
I think they couldn't quite work out that this wasn't the place to be abusing someone. But there we go.
Hey, look, we're up on time. I had one more question for you. Do you have time, or should we knock it on?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's the what's next question. You had
my wife. She ran in.
That's right. Yeah, I got to call her on the line. Saying,
on the line. This is Zoe.
Where's the paycheck coming from in April? No, I read the most remarkable sort of thank you letter from Delia and Michael about you. And what I mean by that is, in this world, you can we read them all the time, right? Thanks for doing a great job. Good luck in your next adventure. We'll be staying in touch. Bang. Yeah. Your letter that they wrote about you couldn't have been more different to that in its sincerity and authenticity and even their vulnerability in what they said about you. So you clearly have a tremendous relationship with the two of them. How did that come about, and then how does that lead you into what's next? After March of next year.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that the letter was incredible, really, and when I went to see them to say I was leaving, I said the one thing I want to protect here is that no one slides out the side door or the back door, because what we've all done together doesn't deserve that. It doesn't deserve me to sneak off and just take another job. the minute I had my notice in and I get an offer and, oh, I know I said I was going to give you a year's notice, but actually I'm off. I said, I won't do that to you. I said, 'cause I've got too much respect for you. I said, and likewise, all I'd ask is that I'm paid the respect that I think I'm owed. I said, and if there's any comms from the club, all I ask is that the comms come directly from you. Whatever you say, I don't really care. I said, if it's a bit shallow, super deep, or whatever, I said, I'm not worried. I said, because I know that you'll pick whatever you think is right, and that's enough for me. So when it actually came to the moment of, okay, because this is in March, I had my notice in, and we announced it in, I think June, maybe early June, something like that. The time came of, okay, the comms guys need to get some comments from Delia and Michael, and then when that letter came through, they actually sent it to my house because they were away. They said, "Right, we're going to post it to you, and you're the only person who can change it." I'm like, okay, so I'm waiting for the post the next day. Didn't come. I'm like reading our comms, going, hasn't turned up here. What do we do?
Second class mail.
I know, yeah. It came the next day, and yeah, I opened it at home, and I was like, wow, okay, that's wow. I didn't expect. I'm not going to lie. I expected to be some nice comments and some grateful words, but not to that detail and as like you say, showing that vulnerability they did, and that means the world, because it's ultimately this football club special, but I've stayed here as long as I have because of them, and the people I work with, not because of Norwich City or the size of the club or whatever. Absolutely not. It's the people I work with every day, and them to have been the key driver in, okay, I'll do another year, I'll do another 2 years. Come on, there's still stuff to be done here, because they've made me part of the family. They've made me feel special. They've given me autonomy to do a job. They've backed me in the real difficult moments, which is when people get really tested, not when it's easy, but actually when it's tough. I've learned every day from them, so incredibly grateful. But what it does, unfortunately, it makes it really hard for the next job. I thought, when I left Huddersfield, we had an owner, Dean Hoyle, who I thought, I'll never work for an owner as good as this. And I found two people who were as good as Dean in very different ways, but and I think I've been so lucky that I've worked with two, let's say, world-class sort of ownership groups who, again, it comes back to the people. And you asked, how did that relationship build? It built on trust, it built on honesty, it built on going through tough times together. It came from being vulnerable. I remember sitting in their house after year one, talking through the first year. And I said to him, you might want to sack me after this, because I've made so many mistakes. I'm going to talk you through them, but I'm going to talk through the rationale behind them. I'm going to talk through what I've done about it, and I'm going to talk about how I'm going to become better through that. But if at the end of it, you want me to just disappear, I'll disappear, because, I wouldn't blame you. And I think it's, that's where, in them moments, that's where deep trust is built, and that's what it is. It's deep trust that they know I'd do nothing to harm their football club, which is like their baby. And I know they'd do nothing to harm me or any of my staff, and I think that's, that's when you have that, where, you know what, we've gone through real difficult times, but they've never once turned their back, and I've never once turned my back. I think that's what builds that sort of tight bond. And I know that's lucky, and I'm also not deluded enough to know that that might not be the case again. My next job might be, it's an ownership group of 7 people, and you're guaranteed you're not going to get on with all 7. There's going to be a couple on there you think are, not the best particular human beings or whatever. So I'm not deluded on that, and that's what made it a really, really tough decision. But I looked at it and thought, well, I want to do Everest. I feel ready to do Everest, or certainly by the time Choi's come and gone, it's like, I don't want to do Everest while I'm an employee anywhere. I want to do that where it's a clear mind of
nothing else to worry about. Yeah.
I'm not worried about checking my emails. I'm not worried about checking my call. All I have to keep in contact with is a very small circle of people that I love. Yeah. The rest of it can wait. And that's what I wanted to do Everest with. So that's why, when it came to me setting on, I'm going to do it in 2024, it was like, right, let's finish the end of March. I've got 2-3 weeks at home leading before setting off, and then off you go, clear head, hopefully be successful in terms of coming back healthy, and then right, what's next?
And the beautiful thing is, about spending an inordinate amount of time in a tent or walking slowly in one direction is a great time to reflect and think and learn as you go. I found those moments fabulous. Just the breathing and the pace and the rhythm that you get into kind of frees the mind to wander and to think and to dream and to do all sorts of stuff. That's part of what I love about mountaineering. It enables you to do that for an extended period of time, not like half a day or a week or whatever. Like, it is an extended period of time.
Yeah, and every climb I've ever come back from, I come back feeling a better person, feeling renewed, feeling fresh, feeling like there's new ideas. And I'm super excited to do that, not having actually anything in my head from a mundane day-to-day point of view of, oh God, as soon as I got to get back, I've got to sort that contract for that player, I've got to do this, or I've got to deal with this staff member. It's been able to come back going, oh, okay, I'm actually back fresh, ready to plan the next, what I think is the second stage of my working career, because I'm going to be 40, hopefully get Everest done, and it's like, right, I'm seeing it as, oh, brilliant, here's the second half of my work career, and I'm sort of super excited to have that time to really reflect and think, and can come back. I want to come back not a different person, but that's still, there's something nagging at me that I can still do this way better somewhere, and I can still be a much better version of the person I am, having had that last 20 years block of that. And I want to have that time to really just undo all of that and really think back to moments where, God, remember when I acted like that? Why did I do that? That's a bit of a dick there. And, how am I going to deal with that next time? And what's the best version of me next time going to do? And I think that's where I'm super looking forward to having that time on the mountain as well, alone, where I can start to unpack that and take notes and, right, I need to think about that when I get back and stuff. I'm excited.
And that will happen. People, I remember when I came back, people say, how's it changed you? I got two questions when I came back. How's it changed you? And what you're going to do next? Which is the worst question ever. It's like, my answer to that was actually, I'm gonna fall in love and get married and start a family. And I wasn't seeing anybody at the time. It's like, okay, then my next challenge is going to be that. And I was 32. But it does change you. It can't not. And it's not just it as in Everest. Troy Oyu will be the same. And the journey is part of that. For me, it's very different. I was a different stage of my career. You can see, it's funny, I look back over the financial results of the organization I was running, and it was steady until from 2001 to 2005. And then I climbed Everest, and then it went like that and carried on going like that for many, many years. So it was definitely a pivotal part of my life, from a confidence standpoint. Again, I was a bit younger and in a slightly different role, in sort of relating to other people and seeing what you had achieved. And I would never tell anybody. I would never lead with anything. A lot of my friends are like, yeah, man, you need a t-shirt, that says I just climbed up. No, I'm a bit too modest for that kind of stuff. But it gives you for me, it gave me an air of something that clearly helped me in my life and my career. And a year later, I met my wife, and we have 4 kids. And the challenges are very different now. So you will, like you said, that's really interesting. You said, I don't know what it is yet, but there's something there. That will become clear within about 2 weeks of returning from home. It might not become clear on the mountain, but definitely when you get back, that sort of world will open up for sure. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I want to come with you. You're making me feeling
welcome,
feeling jealous for the whole thing. Excellent, Stuart. I'm going to sign off officially. We'll be putting this podcast out sometime soon. But thanks for everything.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jess.